they pushed that real hard, and it's like a recurring theme throughout the entire show. Whereas other shows, like I was kind of saying before, movies, it's like some executive producer in Hollywood gets the script and they're like, nah, we're gonna like do whatever we think is good for the general population. Sometimes it's like you're just sitting there, you're like, what the heck are these people thinking, you know? So maybe now that you're watching Fallout, let's talk about that for a bit. Do you have much experience with Fallout?
I have no experience with Fallout.
Okay.
Well, I have very little because I think I played it for like a couple minutes because I remember you could like pick where you shoot like the enemies and stuff.
Yeah, the VATS system.
Right.
VATS or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember that because I think somebody handed me a controller and I played for like a couple minutes and I remember
you probably played Fallout 3?
Fallout 3 maybe, yeah. And I remember that specifically. That was really like the one of the things that stuck out to me. And at the moment I thought, why do you have to pick where you shoot it? Like why can't you just like try to shoot it? Yeah. And that's kind of like my thought process. But maybe you can tell me otherwise. You asked me about how I thought about the show though, right?
Well, before that though, have you played Elder Scrolls or any of the other Bethesda games?
I have, yeah. I played Oblivion and I played a little bit of Skyrim.
Okay, so if you've played those games, I think you at least have a general sense of like the gist of the types of games. So, yeah, what do you think of the show like with that kind of background? You're not that far into it, by the way, also,
I'm only like an episode and a half.
Okay.
But I was telling Amanda this. I was like,
yeah,
I see something in the show, and I'm like, that's definitely from the video game.
Yeah,
like the little needles that they use.
Yeah. The stim packs or whatever.
I see the boy with the thumb.
Boy with the thumb.
The little kid that's plastered everywhere.
Boy.
He's everywhere, and I mean that's like the literally the logo,
the mascot or whatever.
Mascot of Fallout.
So I finished the first season like a couple days ago, and I think that's kind of the beauty of this show in particular is like Grace, obviously my wife, like has no affiliation to Fallout whatsoever, but she thought it was interesting. So for a newcomer, like they can watch a show like this and be like, whoa, that was pretty cool. But then people that are gamers like can pick out these specific things that they did, and it's like the fan service thing to a certain extent, but it does like give that extra little level. And I think what's actually interesting about some of these newer video game show movie adaptations is there's mechanics in the video game, right, that they then can use to implement into the show. So what I started to kind of subconsciously notice about the show, and I want you to watch out for this as you're continuing to watch it, but I noticed that the characters keep coming across these very obvious moral dilemmas. And that's kind of what these like RPGs are like, right? The characters like, I don't even want to give an example off the top of my head, but it's like they give you a quest and they're like, you know, find the cat or like, you know, let the cat die or something like that. And it's like,
yeah, they do that in the first episode where the witch she's just like your daughter or all these people.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great example. So it's like this very obvious moral conundrum, and it's like you could see if the character goes in one direction, it could take the plot in a totally different direction. And I think that's honestly what draws people to these games in the first place. So for me, it was really cool to see that they pushed that real hard, and it's like a recurring theme throughout the entire show. Whereas other shows, like I was kind of saying before, movies, it's like some executive producer in Hollywood gets the script and they're like, nah, we're gonna like do whatever we think is good for the general population. So okay, let me just say really quick too. So you were like, you're like, any game that's made, I'm gonna go see the movie just because I love games. I feel a little bit torn about that because I feel like they can butcher it for everyone else sometimes. There's opportunities where it's like, you know, let's say I'm really into God of War, and then they make a God of War show, and I show Grace, and she's like, that like is not interesting at all, just because the execution was terrible. Sometimes it can almost like ruin it for everybody, but the source material is like amazing.
I don't even think it matters at that point, because at that point it's like they're either gonna play it or they either have played it and they're a gamer, or they're just not gonna play it.
But
or it could get them into it.
But the other thing, though, I will say is like there's been examples where there's games that are already like movies that Grace has just kind of sat with me and just watched, like Kingdom Hearts. She actually watched me play The Last of Us 1 and 2. So even before we watched the show, The Last of Us, like she already saw the entire game because it kind of felt like a movie in itself.
Right.
So that's the question too. Like, you guys saw The Last of Us show, right?
Yeah.
What did you think of that? Because it felt very similar to the game.
You know, I didn't get super far in the game. I think I was playing on too hard of a difficulty.
You always do this, dude. You're like, I got a quarter way through because I was playing on super duper extra hard difficulty.
Dude, I need the challenge. Like, I just need.
But sometimes they get it's some. Okay, this is a tangent, but I think sometimes the extra hard difficulty is meant for.
Dude, you're a gamer. You gotta play on hard, bro. You know,
it's
leave
meant
the normal mode for the noobs.
It's meant for people who have already played on normal difficulty, and then they're like, okay, I get how the game mechanics work, and then you replay in hard.
Nah. Okay, maybe for some games, but it's like, come on, like have some honor, you know. Have some honor and play the game on hard.
Hey, at least
Challenge yourself.
At least I finish my video games.
Oh, do you? Or you
sometimes?
Yeah. Oh, hey, I mean, I gotta beat Persona on very hard.
Oh, dude, you're never gonna finish.
Oh, you know,
game. You're never gonna see what happens to Morgana.
You know what happened in BioShock?
Yeah.
Infinite. I literally got to the last boss and I died like 10 times and I was just gave up.
Bro, the end of BioShock Infinite is the best part of BioShock Infinite.
I didn't see it.
No. Oh my. You gotta stop playing games on extra hard difficulty, dude.
Nah.
But anyway, what did you think of The Last of Us before we dive into our speculation?
I thought it was really good. I thought they did a great job of capturing the monsters and the fear. I mean, the show overall was really well casted, I thought. And they did such a good job with all the cinematography and everything. It was just and they did a really good job of, you know, I didn't play through the entire game. I got to like I got through like halfway of like the first season basically in the game, which is not that far, but I could see how they basically attached it to the game. And how they basically did that thing where they kill off the characters, you know, and every episode's like new characters, new story. So I could feel that in the way that they made that. I'm a big fan of. Here's the thing. I love horror, but I don't love watching horror. If that makes sense.
You like the idea of horror, but you don't like experiencing.
Right. I think horror is such a very difficult genre to get right. It's one of the most difficult in my opinion, and I feel like it has there's so much thought that goes into horror, because you are literally coming at people's
emotions,
the very like tip of the emotion, or the very back seated part of the emotions that brings out fear. And I think I really appreciate that the art style, like the art and the all the creative process that goes into horror stuff. Even though I don't like watching it that much because I'm not good with like horror faces and stuff. It like gives me nightmares. But I really I want to make a horror game at some point just for the fun of it,
or at least add horror elements into the game could be cool.
Right. But yeah, going back to The Last of Us, I thought it was great. What did you think about it?
I really liked the show, and I think they executed it relatively perfectly, honestly. But it was just the fact, like I said, it's like the game in itself feels like a movie. It's like that's why Grace was willing to just sit and kind of watch it, because it's like there's so many cutscenes and everything is motion captured, so it's like kind of already watching people act anyway. So that's what feels weird about some of these decisions sometimes with these games that are already starting to feel like movies. So on our list we have, for example, I brought up God of War earlier, and I know there's kind of rumors going around, and sometimes they confirm rumors, and then it's like it kind of falls through. But it's like, how could they make a God of War show or movie that's like any better than, or really any different than the game itself.
Yeah.
And I guess we're specifically talking about like God of War 2018 and Ragnarok.
Well, I think they would have to start with the original God of War, right? Like him against the gods of Olympus.
I don't know.
That's kind of like the origin of God of War.
It is, but it feels like what I don't know, man. Actually, that's
they could do like something like the Star Wars did, where they do like the Ragnarok, and then they go back in time and show like him against the gods.
I guess that could be kind of cool.
Could be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, yeah, they'd really have to just kind of build a monster. Is like the approach that they'd have to take. Maybe they showcase like a weak Kratos that's like basically bullied by these gods constantly, and he kind of finds like his purpose, and something drives him to be, kill all the gods for whatever purpose. He has like a little switch in his head or something. What was the reason for coming after the gods? Do you remember?
So I actually played all the God of Wars, and from what I remember, the gods essentially tricked him into doing something for them, and they tricked him into killing his own family.
Oh.
The reason he's white, like pale white, is because they're the ashes of his wife and daughter on his skin.
Wow.
It's like kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But this kind of gets explained like really quickly, like in the beginning cutscene, I believe, of the first game. So it is a really intense motivation that he has to seek revenge, and obviously those games I think could, it's almost, that's actually an interesting point, because in my mind I'm like, oh, everybody knows God of War with the Viking kind of mythology, they're going to just dive right into that. But if they did go back to the kind of like Greek mythology, that could be a cool place to start. This game's had a lot of cutscenes, but it was like PS2, so it could be cool as a live action, but
yeah. They'd have to go ham on the cinematics though, because
that's a good point.
Him using the chains to like go up the monsters and stuff. Like I think it'd be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think a lot of these shows are kind of, whether or not they do well or not, are kind of predicated on their budget, because some games need a higher budget to be able to sell the audience, obviously. And it feels like, I mean, at least a lot of the games that we're even thinking could be made into movies, like, would have to have these crazy budgets to begin with. So I don't know, it's just kind of crazy, man. It's crazy we live in a world that video games have kind of traversed this barrier to being way more mainstream to begin with. But for example, even my cousins that moved to Houston, their little daughter, she sets up all of these like pillows and stuff, and she pretends like she's Mario in an obstacle course, because she's like obsessed with the Mario movie. So that's kind of a cool thing that these
future gamer right there.
Yeah. It's kind of cool. That's what these movies have brought to us, is like almost like a rejuvenation of some of these older franchises.
Yeah.